Hey guys, how's it going? It's RG11 here today with another formation guide. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 4-4-2 and why it is one of the best formations for you to use right now in FIFA 21. We're going to be explaining the custom tactics and instructions that we're going to get on a little bit later in the video. But starting off with this 4-4-2, why I like this 4-4-2 so much? Well, it is a very simple and easy formation to use. Yet, even though it is so simple and easy, it is very, very overpowered. Has got a very good, strong back four across the midfield, 2 up front. It doesn't get much more simple than that, but we can make it a little bit more complicated with our instructions and tactics. But those 2 wide midfielders I want to start off with because I think they are probably the most important players in this formation. Now, they are going to be dictated by how the midfielders and the fullbacks act, but ultimately those 2 wide midfielders are going to need to drift inside and link up with those 2 strikers, because those 2 midfielders' primary jobs are really going to be holding up the play and making sure that we don't concede too many counter attacks. So those wide midfielders are going to have to get involved in the attacking positions and make sure it is easy for those strikers to get their chances and score goals. So now going into those tactics, I like to start off with a press on possession loss. Now in this formation, it works extremely well because you do man mark very, very well. Obviously, we have that press that works very well for 7 seconds, but in this formation, especially more than a lot of other formations, it does man mark extremely well. You link up very, very well with your opposite number, and it man marks extremely well. Makes it very, very difficult for your opponent to play out. This is one of the most effective formations at using a press. It works very, very well. I don't personally like to use balance too much in FIFA. I find that when I use balance, I don't quite get the zazz that I really want. I like to win that ball a little bit higher at the pitch, but if you're someone who doesn't like to be maybe as open defensively, you can choose to go with balance, but I would personally like to play on that press on possession loss. In terms of the width at 5, I like to keep it quite standard in this formation. You could also go a little bit narrower as well if you do struggle to get those wide players involved in the play. But we're going to get into those instructions in a little bit and how we get those guys involved. But I like to have it on around 5. Keep it pretty standard. I think it works very well for this formation. Depth-wise, we're going to keep that on around about 4. I don't like to go super high on the depth. Obviously, counter-attacks, especially counter-attacks up the wing, are very, very OP in this game. Very, very meta. So you don't want to be too high up and make those counter-attacks too easy to come by for your opponent. But ultimately, you don't want to go too deep because then it's going to make it very, very difficult for you to get out. You're going to be very pinned in your own half of the pitch. So around 4 depth is a very good balance. In terms of the offensive style, long ball is the way to go. Now, long ball simply, as we've explained in a lot of our videos, long ball is simply just like the get in behind instruction that you put onto some of your players in the instructions tab. So this will kind of negate necessarily the need to use the get in behind instruction when we do get there, which is something that you will see in a little bit. But long ball is very effective. Again, it works extremely well if you've got fast players, if they're great at getting in behind those space. Is exceptionally good at making those runs for you this year. So this long ball tactic is for me, it's even more effective than something like fast build up. It works super well with this formation as well. Offensive width, we've decided to go for around 6. I don't like to be super wide when I attack in this formation. Like I said, I do want to get those guys involved, those wide players involved, so I don't want them to be drifting too far wide. So I do like to keep them on around about 6. You'll see in the instructions how we get these guys involved little bit more, because a lot of people do struggle to get those wide players involved in the game. And in terms of players on the box, I want to keep that on around about 6. I do think 6 is a good number for most formations to have players in the box. Obviously, crossing is very overpowered in this game, especially like driven crosses, very overpowered. So you want to have a good number of players in the box, but you don't want to have like a crazy amount of numbers. You don't want to go like super high at 8 or 9 or anything, because just going to get counter-attacked so easily, and I don't want it to be too low unless you're somebody who doesn't like to cross the ball. But given that crossing is so overpowered in the game, you want to try and involve it in your play in some way. So around about 6 is great. And then corners and free kicks, you want to keep them on around 1, because again, counter-attacks are so overpowered in this game. So you don't want to have too many players up at the top end of the pitch for a free kick or a corner. You want to keep those guys back, especially on the wing. Given that from a corner, your team is going to be very disorganized, it's going to make it very easy for your opponent to counter you. Now, moving into those instructions, the 2 strikers are where I want to start with, because I think these 2 guys are very important. Now, as we alluded to with the long ball tactic, that you don't want to have these guys on getting behind. Not that you don't need to have them, you can choose to have them as well. It's just not necessary to have them on getting behind, because you've got the long ball instruction which is essentially get in behind. So you can have this on if you choose to, but it's not necessarily necessary because of that long ball tactic. Stay central is where I like to go with my two strikers in this formation, because we do have a little bit width in this formation, as we'll get onto with the fullbacks and with the wide midfielders. Aggressive interceptions as well. I like to have that on a lot of my attackers because I want to try and win the ball back. It works very well with the press on possession loss. So it's also aggressive interceptions works very well for two reasons. One, it does drain a little bit of stamina on your opponents because they're constantly going to be under pressure with the aggressive interceptions and the press after possession loss. And reason number two is, if you are pressing at the top end of the pitch and your guys do miss and they try and go in for a tackle or something and they do miss, it's not a big deal because you've got plenty of numbers back. You know, you've got those 4 guys behind, you've got the 4 defenders as well. So being a little bit aggressive at the top end of the pitch is not a bad thing. You don't want to be aggressive though in defense, because if you lunge into tackles, if your midfielders are lunging into tackles and they miss, again, it's just going to make counter-attacks super overpowered. And we've also got them on stay forward as well, which is really, really important. This is a very overpowered technique. This works a lot better as well with faster players, because a lot of people, especially in FUT Champs at the top end, you know, the top skill chain of FIFA, people like to have these guys on stay forward because it just, again, makes counter-attacks so overpowered. So especially if somebody plays with their fullbacks on balance, if you have stay forward on, it does make it very easy to exploit those spaces out on the wing, but it works best with really quick players best. Now dropping into those two midfielders, I like to have these guys on stay on edge of the box. You don't want too many players getting in the box. We've already got that pretty much set up on the tactics, but I like these guys to sit on the edge of the box. Yes, they're still going to get involved in the play every now and again, but they're really there to just negate the opportunity of counterattacks. And it also works best when using a press, because these guys then can press from a little bit deeper whilst not giving up too much space in behind. But for that reason, I want to have them on conservative interceptions. Whilst I want them to press, I don't want them to be lunging into tackles and things like that, because that's just going to make the counterattack really easily. If they don't win the ball, it's going to make it really easy for your opponents to counter you. In terms of the two winger slots, now I like to have these guys on cut inside. This is how you get these guys involved in the play. We'll get up to the fullbacks in a second, but I like to get these guys involved in the play. These guys are going to be the main goal scorers with your strikers as well. So it's kind of that front four from Mertens, Immobile, Dybala and Gomez are going to be your main goal threat. So they're the guys who you want to really try and get involved in the play. So if you have these guys on balanced width, they're going to be way too far out on the wing to really get involved in not just potentially scoring goals, but also the build-up play. They're not going to be involved in the build-up play. Is going to be between your 4 in the middle. So I like to have these guys on cut inside because it just gets them involved, not necessarily just in goal scoring, but also in the build-up play. Makes it very easy to link up with kind of those two wide players, with, like, for example, Gomez on this right-hand side. Makes it easy for him to link up with Milinkovic-Savic and Hakimi in defence, or link up with Dybala and Milinkovic-Savic. That's why I like that cut inside tactic. In terms of the supports on crosses, you don't need these guys on getting to the box for crosses, because that means that they're just going to be charging into the box all the time, regardless of if there's a chance or not, because there's going to be some occasions where a cross is not possible. If you have everybody charging in the box, it's going to make it really easy for your opponents to counter you. Even if there isn't an opportunity for you to cross the ball, sometimes you're going to want to come backwards and maybe just try and build up the play in a different way. But if you've got everybody charging into the box, that's why sometimes when there isn't that cross and you want to just try and play the ball back into your midfield, that's why sometimes there isn't anybody there and you end up having to pass it back to your fullback. So it's good to have these guys on balance, and that's why we have the midfielders on stay back while attacking as well, because then we are able to build back attacks if those crosses aren't there. And last but not least, I have got the fullbacks on stay back while attacking. This is something that is adaptable dependent on how you like to play. For me personally, playing a lot of FUT Champs, playing a lot of Division 1, one thing that I have come across a lot, people are really abusing the wings with pace, especially like we said, and those stay forward tactics that a lot of people like to have on their strikers and wingers. So counterattacks can come really easily if you decide to play with your fullbacks on balance. Now the benefits of having them on balance is, especially because we have the wide players on cut inside, these guys going on balance are going to make it a lot easier for you, a lot more difficult for your opponent to defend, because they're going to have one guy who's running on the inside, one guy who's running on the outside. So unless they're going to have their wide players on comeback on defense, you're always going to be 2-on-1 in attack. However, when you turn the ball over, the negative is that they have stay forward on their attackers. They have quick attackers going to make it quite difficult for you to defend, very easy for them to counter. So it's kind of risk reward. It depends how you want to play. For me personally, playing at the top level of FIFA, playing against really good FIFA players, you'd rather have those players staying back. So if you're someone who maybe plays at a slightly lower level of FIFA, you could easily have these guys on balance and do very, very well. But for me, because of the level of competition that I play against, stay back while attacking really is a must. We've also then got conservative interceptions, because again, I don't really want these fullbacks to be jumping and diving into tackles, potentially missing, because then that's just going to make it very, very easy for my opponent to then pick me apart. So conservative interceptions are the way to go there. That is it for the 4-4-2 formation, guide. This is one of my favorite formations in the game. This is one of my 4 game plans that I like to use, and I use this weekend league, and these tactics work very, very well. These are probably my most successful tactics this weekend league, so hopefully you guys can try them out. Let me know in the comment section how they go for you. If you would like anything tweaking, you can let me know down there, and I'll help you out as best I can. If you did enjoy the content, you would like to see more, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. It really does help us out massively. Make sure you do follow us on Twitch and Twitter. If you do have any other questions you want to answer us over there, we'll get around to answering them as quick as we can. But that is all for today, guys. Have an awesome day. I'm out.